This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Today, my answer would be to start a Substack if you haven't, and so that you own your email list, and so that you will just enjoy life as a writer in this day and age. I started one a year ago, and it's just changed my world. I love it, and I always encourage writers now to start a Substack if they can.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Rene Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
Hey there, writers. Special shout out to Oklahoma City Writers, our local writing group where I had the pleasure of speaking last weekend. There is no substitute for a great group of people who share your interests and goals and dreams. And Father's Day is also just behind us. My kids and I played a bunch of board games and saw The Flash. Jesse,
Nice.
How do you celebrate Father's Day?
Well, since I recently got my dad into sports, I might take him to like a baseball game or watch a classic. I got him into basketball recently, and which has been my love. I've loved basketball since I was since I was 14, and just like last year I was able to get him into basketball. And so maybe I'll show him some classic games, because he's always asking me questions about like, what was it like to watch Shaq play or Jordan or whatever. So maybe we'll watch some classic games on because a lot of them are on YouTube, and we'll probably take him out, and we just won't tell him where because it's hard for him to make a decision. So we'll just take him to Chinese food somewhere here in town.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Rene, I'm always talking about the WriterCon small group retreat, which of course is coming up pretty soon, July 19th through 23rd in Branson. And of course, the WriterCon conference every Labor Day weekend in Oklahoma City. But you're launching a new WriterCon offering.
Yes. So we are going to offer an online workshop, I guess you would say, to help those who have not come to WriterCon or have never been to a conference, or just want some tips and tricks to make the best and the most out of a conference. So it's free to sign up, and we will be getting information out about that on how to sign up for this little online workshop. I think it's invaluable, and I would highly recommend it if you've never been to a conference or just want some tips, because when you go to a conference, you want to be prepared. You want to know the tips and tricks on how to do things right, how to make the most of it. And it can be overwhelming if you just show up and you don't have a plan. So we'll walk you through all that and get you ready for WriterCon or whatever conference you choose. Hopefully it's WriterCon, but it will work for any conference that you go to.
Yeah. And we're thinking this is the first of a continuing series of webinars. So find out about it, sign up so you always get noticed. 2 suggestions. You can always go to the WriterCon website, which predictably is writercon.com. You can also, while there, sign up for our newsletter, which, will always keep you up to date on this sort of thing. And I had another way. Oh, of course, Facebook. You can join the WriterCon Facebook group, and then you really will know before anybody else what's going on. So check out these webinars. I think you might find them pretty useful. Okay, our interview today is with Andrew Kooman. He's a Canadian author who writes for the page, the stage, and the screen. His writing has been translated into more than 10 languages and published all around the world. His stage plays have been produced in Canada and the United States, including an off-Broadway production in, of course, New York City. His critically acclaimed play, She Has a Name, has been made into a feature film, and his most recent book, just released last month, was Popcorn Helmet. We're going to talk to him about both of those projects and much more after the news segment and a brief word from our friends at Draft to Digital.
Hi, this is Kevin Tomlinson with Draft to Digital. Ebooks are amazing, but there's just something about having your book in print. That's why we built D2D Print. We take care of you with free layout templates and formatting, and we can convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound print cover automatically. Come check out D2D Print and all the cool tools we've built for you. Find out more at draft2digital.com.
All right. Well, this is sort of a special edition of the news segment. Those of you who are regular listeners will remember a couple of podcasts ago when we just threw together all the stories bubbling about AI and ChatGPT and how it's going to replace writers, which it isn't, and so forth. Well, right now we seem to have the same thing going on, but we're talking about book banning, right? Which seems to be all across the country. And, you know, as a writer and somebody who often says he grew up in the library and learned to love books in a library, that's concerning, even when you don't get into any of the politics involved. So anyway, so what I've put together is some stories about book banning so we can talk about it. All right. News story number one. I wanted to start with one that you might not have seen. And here's the headline: the sales of LGBTQ fiction reach an all-time high. Yeah, you heard it right. Despite all that's going on in the world and the book banning and whatnot, the fiction has reached an all-time high. According to Circana Bookscan, we're printing that print unit sales, not online, but print sales for LGBTQ fiction grew 11% during the past year as opposed to the previous year. One of their analysts said, quote, "It is important to note that the growth in LGBTQ fiction has outpaced the overall market for fiction sales, including adult and kids and young adult fiction combined, which remains relatively flat." Here's something else you might not have guessed. As you can see, the growth of LGBTQ fiction and the real sales spans various genres, but the category with the most significant gains is adult romance. Sales of LGBTQ romance novels grew over 40% as compared to the previous years, 17% for the next category, which is general adult fiction, which, you know, could mean anything. I don't know. Jesse, what do you think? You think book bans have hurt or helped sales or been completely irrelevant?
I think it's like a timeline. I think it helps. It depends on which perspective you're looking at. I would say the people calling for the boycotts fail at the beginning because drawing attention to them draws people who want to support them to buy the books, thus the sales increase. The issue then becomes what happens a year, 3 years, 5 years later when those books are not in school libraries and harder to find depending on where they've been banned. And then it's almost like the boycotting can win over time. But it always hurts at the beginning because people always want to be like, anytime we try to boycott, again, look at prohibition in this country and what happened there. Like Americans do not respond to boycotts in the way people think they're going to. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to be like, now I want that thing that I didn't want before because someone says I can't have it.
Right. Don't tell me what I can't do, right? Yeah. Rene, I hope you don't mind me saying it, but I know for a fact that you are a very spiritual person. I know you've written many novels published by Christian publishers. I think sometimes people make, now I'm trying to, as lawyers would say, give a leading question. Is there really any antipathy toward LGBTQ books in that community?
Well, my goodness, I don't know if I want to speak for a whole community. I haven't published there in a while, but let me just speak. Let me speak for myself then, if that's fair.
That's definitely fair.
Okay. So, I think book banning should scare all of us because it's, if it's not you now, it may be you later. And so, I think that's where we have to put our mindset. You can certainly anytime speak out against a book. That's our right too in this country. But when you start to get into banning, it's just kind of at another level, right? So,
right.
That's my personal view. So I don't want to speak for an entire community of people, but I would imagine in that entire community of people, there is a large group of varying opinions on it.
Sure.
And
in every other community too. But
yeah,
I'm starting to wonder if maybe the wrong people aren't getting blamed, which leads me to news story 2. Which involves a Washington Post article. Well, they did a lot of research and tracked a lot of detail to try and find out, well, we're hearing about all of these book challenges. Who's doing it? And the upshot of this piece is that most, like a large plurality of all of these book challenges that we're hearing about in the news, have been brought by 11 people.
Oh my goodness.
11 people. And most of the objections are related to sexual content and LGBTQ community, although those are 2 separate categories. And the first one is larger. I'll wait for a moment so that Jesse could get that slide up. But anyways, so here's what they did. They requested copies of all book challenges filed in basically the past calendar school year with 153 school districts. They tracked the requests to remove books from school libraries. In total, officials in more than 100 of those school systems across 37 states responded, providing over 1,000 complaints, over 2,500 pages worth of stuff. The article had some really interesting charts listing, for instance, the reasons given for banning. The top category was sexual, which could mean a lot of different things, but 61% gave that as the reason for the banning. And another chart indicated that 42% of all books banned, not all requests, but all books actually banned, did contain LGBTQ content. So a small number of people were responsible for most of the book challenges, over 40%, according to the Post. Individuals who filed 10 or more complaints were responsible for 2/3 of all the challenges. We know that in some cases, these, what are you going to call them, serial filers, relied on a network of volunteers to gather sometimes in conservative parents groups like Moms for Liberty to do all this filling out forms and filing and whatnot. Rene, you may know more about this than I do, and you, like me, are very concerned about this trend of book banning. Is this a widespread concern, or is it just 11 radicals somewhere?
I guess, these 11 parents or whoever, they're making a challenge, and they're right to do so, for sure.
Energetically, yes.
Very energetically, and they're working.
Are you one of the 11, Rene? Come clean.
Yeah, I have to leave the house and do something, but no,
okay.
I'm not one of them. But it's fascinating to look at how people can work a system if they understand how it works. And these people if this is accurate, this is really interesting. It's interesting that somebody has dug into all of this and rooted out all of this information too. That's why I think investigative reporters, this is just a side note, investigative reporters are going to save our country, because they really do very good work in finding facts and rooting out.
Well, I agree. And particularly here, I was saying when I talked about it, almost nothing in this is what I would have guessed it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse,
Yes.
I'm not gonna. I'm judging that expression and trying to decide if I think you're one of the 11.
Listen,
Probably not.
Hypothetically, if I was, it would only be the James Patterson books. So.
That's the only one you agree. Only banning case you agree with.
Yep. Hypothetically.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
Wow, this is we're gonna have to do some sort of podcast just on this, but that's another story.
No, I'm going to clip that and see if we
He's
can
gonna be in
James Patterson
silhouette.
on the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
We're coming for you, James.
Yeah. All right, Jesse, cue up the music. Let's talk to Andrew Kooman.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Okay, usual first question. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Today, my answer would be to start a Substack if you haven't, and so that you own your email list, and so that you will just enjoy life as a writer in this day and age. I started one a year ago, and it's just changed my world. I love it, and I always encourage writers now to start a Substack if they can.
Well, that's one we haven't had before. Can you expand, tell us a little bit more about Substack and what you're doing there.
Sure. So I'm sure a lot of writers have like Contact or MailChimp, kind of use email services like that. Substack is a newer platform. A lot of writers have moved to it. A lot of like news people have moved to it, kind of in this age of censorship. And it's a platform where you really can own your own mailing list, and it's just like super user friendly. And it's really designed for writers. And so it's like a newsletter / website. You can publish podcasts, you can have video, just everything is embedded. And so what it's really done for me is allow me to focus on my craft and not have to worry about like doing the blog posts and then connecting it to the MailChimp email list and like promote, like doing all these separate things. It's all integrated, and it's just been a delight. And I love writing regularly in a new way with my subscribers. It's sort of just like lit my fire.
Wow, that is great advice. I don't think we've ever even talked about it on the podcast, Bill. So that's awesome.
That's how we should do the WriterCon magazine, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, exactly. My mind's now. And okay, Andrew, back to you. So, Andrew, I've known you to write quite a bit of different things as we've gotten to know each other through the years, and I've interacted with you actually through plays and stage scripts, but what you do television film. So tell us how you got into that.
Yeah, I think my story as a writer is just really, in a way, it's like working out my faith, but also my passion for writing. I've had incredible opportunities that I couldn't plan for. And so I have two younger brothers, and years ago, I don't know if you remember the magazine called Adbusters. I'm from Canada, so it was a popular magazine here, and it kind of looked at advertising and was provocative. And there was an article that just juxtaposed a child in the States. It was, I think, like kind of like an iPod commercial when the iPod was coming out. This like really trendy, awesome African-American child. And then it was juxtaposed with a child who's like basically that kind of awful image of like the gut pushed out with hunger, malnourished. And there's just side by side. And the provocative question in the magazine was, imagine a new way of being. And so it was really kind of like exposing sort of corruption and capitalism and all like the evils of excess, I guess. Mm-hmm. And my friend was looking at that, and we were all just blown away by this ad. And we said, I think we should make a film about this. Start asking questions about like, why is there such disparity in the world, and kind of, ask that questions about, we always hear like people in countries where there's less affluence are often happier or more joyful, right? So, we were kind of young and maybe naive, and we thought like we were thinking about going to film school, and we said, why, instead of going to film school, why don't we just do a film? And so we ended up doing a documentary film, took us around the world. We asked the same questions of people in areas of extreme wealth and poverty. We traveled to Kenya, India, Thailand, Malaysia, Europe, in Canada and the US. We self-funded it. We kind of committed to work construction for 6 months and became like indentured, servants for like a number of months after we did our trip, but we got the money up front. Anyway, long story short, that was kind of my gateway into filmmaking. And and kind of as we were doing that documentary, I started to find my voice as a writer as I was seeing these incredible issues of disparity, seeing poverty up close and personal. And in a new way, I found, my voice to write and to ask like penetrating questions. And that really kicked off almost probably for the last 15, 20 years. I've done some writing and activism around issues like human trafficking, slavery, gender-based injustice. And so my entry into writing kind of like in that way was kind of through the film, and that's how I entered filmmaking. And then also my writing craft started to kick off simultaneously.
Oh, that's so interesting. So, okay, so we're going to talk about your movie. She has a name here in a second, but it's based on your play that you wrote. And when did you write that play? And how did it feel for it to be adapted into a film?
Oh, it was such a life-changing experience. And don't hold me to the numbers because, like I like remember time like based on where I was. And so like I think my dates will be accurate, but you might have to fact check me. So 2012, I think, was when I wrote that stage play. And I started writing for the stage through a beautiful workshop in Red Deer, Alberta called Scripts at Work. And it was just like at a local community college. And there was sort of like a playwrights guild and a playwrights workshop that gave new writers an opportunity to try their hand at writing for the stage. So I'd never done it before. It was when I saw a poster and it was like, and I had this like deep sense of a story in my gut. Like, and when I write, it comes from kind of like, it's maybe embarrassing for me to name drop like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, but he had the statement. It's like you have to kind of keep your soul available for that one word of truth that outweighs the world. And like intuitively, I understand that. I kind of, when I write a story, I have like a sense in my gut of like what the story is about, even before I have the plot. So I was at this place where I had this sense of like a story, but I didn't know what the story was. And I saw this poster on the college campus. It's like, do you have a story to tell? I was like, yes, I do. And then the next question on the poster was, have you ever written a play? And I was like, I've never written a play. And then the like call to action was join the workshop and write a play. So I submitted, it was accepted. I got to work with like this incredible group of professional playwrights to develop the script. And then that in the next 2 years I submitted, and She Has a Name came out of that workshop. So long story short, that was in 2012, kind of totally a baby in writing plays, but I just found I really love the format to get people talking, to kind of go into a dark room with people and turn on the lights and really explore. I think it's a location where you can explore deep ideas, deep truths, and get people talking about them.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about She Has a Name. This play and movie concerns human trafficking, right? Yeah. Specifically trafficking children into sexual slavery. Did you find any resistance on stage or Hollywood to what at least is listed online as being a thriller, but one that concerns a very serious, if not heart-wrenching subject?
Yeah, I would say we did, especially when I adapted the stage play to the screen. And so when it was independently produced, we said, let's just try this. And Burn Thicket Theater out of Calgary took a risk with the production. Right. And we sold out every show in that first week. And we're like, wow, people are responding to this. And then we over time, we said, we got to bring this across Canada because the message is important. So we ended up doing across Canada is a big country, a 12, 13 city tour. We kind of tried to use fringe festivals and piggybacked off of it. Audiences were always receptive to it, and it kind of surprised us. But I think because the play was hard hitting and it brought people to the edge, but it didn't push them over. And my hope through it was always to not exploit or not exploit in any way the people who are subject of this terrible issue. So it was a really eye-opening kind of story for people. But where we found resistance was when it was adapted to the screen, and we brought the production to Thailand to film. And the film commission, like everything has to be approved by the government film commission. And there was just real resistance. And we had been approved. And then as we were basically pressing play on spending all the money, bringing the actors over, all the things around producing the film commission said, you can't film it anymore. So it was stopped like 2 or 3 days before production. And we really had to scramble to kind of find a way to make it happen. So I did have to adapt the script. We really kept it true to the story, but we did have to tweak it a little bit to kind of make it a little less generic about Thailand and more about Southeast Asia. And so there's some kind of, that was a challenge. Like artistically, you don't want to compromise your message, but at the same time, we're like, we're here, we got to do this thing. And if we want to do it, we have to adapt. So that was really interesting. And to answer your earlier question, Rene, it was like so surreal to bring it from stage to screen and to see it embodied in a different way, and all the challenges of making something that was so raw on the stage into something like bigger for a bit like a wider audience. And it was really wonderful.
Yeah, it is a strange feeling too, because I've had a couple of books adapted into film, and it is a strange feeling to have that happen and see your words sort of come into 3D. So it's hard to describe it, but I can relate to that. So I understand that you had to have had and done a lot of research for this, because you don't want to just pretend like you know something. If you're going to write about something, you want to really understand it. So talk about that kind of research. How do you go from just generally understanding a topic to really pressing in and getting details and understanding what you're writing about?
Yeah, so I try to do good research whenever I write, especially if it's about a historical subject or an issue like that, especially like when, in the real world, human trafficking happens around us every day, everywhere. So I had through the play, like mounting the play, producing the play, but also traveling around the world and working in areas of extreme poverty, I was able to see certain things up close. So I could recognize it in a certain way in certain contexts. And the play, because it's focused on Southeast Asia, and because I'd spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, I felt I could be true to the subject matter, but then also really did need to require research. So I reached out to NGOs, talked to people who worked with victims and survivors of trafficking. Also, like not only people in an overseas context, but also locally, and did a lot of reading about the subject matter to bring it, hopefully, like for it to ring true. So I think that is really important. It's easy to sort of jump in kind of with the hypothesis of what it looks like, and that changed over time. I did base the inciting incident for the story was a real life incident of trafficking that took place on the Thai-Malaysian border, a water truck incident where people were being brought across the border, and the truck ran out of gas, and then the people who were driving it just abandoned the truck. And then I think 56 of the people that were in the back of that truck did die. And so that was a story that I learned from someone who was working with an agency in Southeast Asia, and kind of had that sense of the story, a story about justice, about, doing right in the world. And when I heard that story, it's like, okay, I think this is the plot point that can open it up for me. So it was based and grounded in reality to start. And I think whenever I write, whether it's about an issue like that or something else, I look for those kind of human moments or historical moments that are like tangible, that you can embody and explore in that way.
Sure. Did you have to deal with any blowback or criticism? I mean, you talked about some of the obstacles you've had, but I'm guessing that when you're dealing with such a serious and potentially controversial subject, there might be some criticism. Am I right?
There was. And like, okay, so I did with the play, I loved, I'm going to forget the exact name, but this idea of like a Greek chorus, I just was fascinated by it. And this is early in my playwriting career. So I worked in this sort of mysterious Greek chorus of like ghosts that kind of haunted the play, and they were like former trafficking victims. And that audiences really like that. A lot of people really like that. The Calgary CBC theater critic did not like that. So there's like, there's some like, sometimes it got hammered by certain critics. But for the most part, like what was amazing, and like, I don't know if I'd call it theater as activism. I think it was just like exploring like important truths through drama. But what this play did is it brought so many different people together, like police, human trafficking agencies, survivor groups, people that would never come at the table and talk to each other, politicians, like faith-based communities, like just the general public. And so I think that was, I wish I could write like that all the time, where, just brought people together, and it was, there's something about it, but it did bring people together in a way that was interesting. And I think what I really learned through that is that story is such an effective tool to open people's hearts and capture the imaginations of people's hearts to start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You can get into like this argument of like creativity for affect, and like, I don't necessarily always want to write just to like stir emotions or about an issue, but I think there is a way to do it to like bring people together in a purposeful way to not only entertain, but then also to activate and engage people beyond that. So for whatever reason, that really worked for She Is a Name, and I'll try to do that again.
Right, sure.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so turning a corner to something lighter.
Because what wouldn't be? Yes, right.
I know.
Right. But I mean, amazing that you're tackling that, and I agree that these kinds of stories can start the conversation in ways that they wouldn't normally get attention. So, bravo for that. And but you also have a kid's book called Popcorn Helmet, and we've already discussed that you write across the board on everything. I'm not sure there is something you don't write, but this is exciting. It's cute as can be, and so tell us about your kid's book and where you got the idea.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm a dad. I have two young kids, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old. Every night I need a book to read. And I admit sometimes it's like when I read the books, I have Oscar-worthy performances, that they do deserve awards. And some nights it's like I'm like Calvin's dad and Calvin and Hobbes having to read Hamster Huey and the Gooey Kablooey one more time. And I just want to go nuts. And so, I think I've talked to a lot of parents and they're like, I could write a kid's book, right? So there's a little bit of that going on here, not to minimize the form. Like it was just a joy to write this. And, based on what we just talking about trafficking, I tend to be drawn to like the dark, hard-hitting issues. And so it's nice to sort of mix things up with the lighter fare. And so Popcorn Helmet really is that for me. I've done some YA writing, like young adult novel stuff. And it's just a delight to kind of leave the dark world of global issues behind and explore kind of just the imaginative and light. And so this was really writing a book that I would want to write for my kids, that I would want to read for them at night, that I think other parents or people who have the honor of reading to children would enjoy reading. And so far I'm discovering that, people are responding to it in that way. And the idea really came, I love popcorn. And one day we're just kind of joking, and I was like, the problem with popcorn is you gotta keep filling up, I could just like scarf it and just keep going, right? So I thought, what is a way where I could be hands-free and eating popcorn and not have to have that barrier, that friction point of back into the bag. So that's kind of where it came from.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
got a helmet.
Yeah.
And maybe some tubes that bring the Diet Coke down so that you can wash it down or something.
Yeah.
Oh, I love popcorn too so much. I mean, so much. And I'm so particular about it. And it could be a whole podcast of popcorn and what it means to us and how it changes our lives. But okay, so a lot of our listeners are writers themselves, emerging writers, or have some experience, and they usually want to know what other writers' days look like, the habits, how you get into it, how do you get out of it, what time do you write, what's your favorite drink when you write? That's a very popular question. So tell us a little bit about what your writing day looks like.
Okay, so coffee. Let's just start with coffee.
Absolutely.
I'm just always drinking coffee. I like it strong. I like it every hour of the day, pretty much. And yeah, it's kind of different. I like to write. I have notes everywhere, sticky notes, scrap pieces of paper. I journal almost every day, like just part of my kind of spiritual formation practice. But I tend to kind of wait for an idea to be ready to go. Like I don't try to force it. And I have that sense, like for me, especially the bigger projects, like a film or like a long form content, it's sort of like it accumulates, and I I've learned to know engage when I'm kind of ready to actually sit down and do it in earnest. But I do, whenever I have an idea, try to capture it and store ideas. I found, and I want to get back to this because pandemic, children, all that kind of stuff. When I'm at the busiest moments of my life is that when I typically tend to be the most flourishing as a writer, which is a total paradox I don't understand and kind of don't love. So what I try to do, especially in the busy times, I set aside a Thursday evening, and I've done this throughout my life. And I kind of put a note on the door. It's like, do not disturb me unless like someone needs to be taken to the hospital. Like that's just the rule. And then I have a space that's like, I have a door that's closed, maybe it'll be candles or things in the room that kind of encourage me to have creativity. And then almost make an agreement with myself that I'm not going to put pressure on myself to produce, but it's almost like inviting myself to have that space to kind of be curious about content or read or research or put something down on the page. And typically by just kind of having a few of those rules and clearing some of those mental barriers that would be barriers to writing, it sets up an environment where I feel free to actually just write. And by not forcing a project, it facilitates like an environment where if I'm ready to write, then I can get into that time and just go. But for shorter form content, like Rene with the Skit Guys, it's like, I'll think of a funny idea, kind of write it in like a Google Keep note, to capture the thing so it's not forgotten, and then I'll go back to it. So I kind of use notes as a way to like reference and go back. But then otherwise try to just facilitate an environment for myself that encourages me to write. And that's what I've learned. It's like giving space and not putting pressures sets me up well to write.
Fantastic. Well, very good advice. So our final question always is, and I'm guessing there's something, what are you working on next?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I have, Ramsey P. Heaton, who is the protagonist of Popcorn Helmet. I have a Christmas book that I'm working on. I have a few other kids' book ideas. So for that, in that realm, so I'm working on that. And then right now for film, we're actually working on a biopic on the prophet Daniel in Babylon. So we're kind of just starting some work on that. And then I have like a dream project that's kind of, I'm always working on in the background, called Theophilus. That's like the working title. And it's like a Sherlock Holmes. If Sherlock Holmes and Gladiator had a love child, it would be kind of like, it's like a forensic Roman story. Yeah.
In the
like
Roman
a
era.
Investigator in Rome. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That sounds great.
Yeah, I'll read that, but probably true of Popcorn Helmet too. So
Yes, please do, yes.
I'm a pretty broad-based reader. Hey, Andrew, thanks for being on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Just got two things to say on the way out. WriterCon Retreat is July 19th through 23rd. Small group feedback and instruction and a great group of people in Branson, Missouri. And WriterCon, the conference, is Labor Day weekend. That's September 1 through 4 in Oklahoma City. Almost 70 presenters. I'm trying to recruit one more at least, just so I can say 70. But we got a lot of presenters and the greatest roster slate of agents that I've ever seen anywhere, including book and movie and TV agents and publishers. So if you're interested in taking your writing career to the next level, think about coming to WriterCon. Our website is writercon.com. All right. Until next time, writers, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.